I seated my mother-in-law at the kids' table she picked for my mom. So my husband and I have been married 4 years, and in that whole time his mother, Diane, has treated my mom like she's the help. Not once has she gotten her name right. She calls her Rosa at every family thing even though her name is Rosalind, and she's corrected her probably a dozen times. My mom just smiles and lets it go because that's who she is. I'm not like that. Anyway, we hosted my daughter's baptism last month. Big deal. 40 people, sit-down lunch at my house. Diane sort of appointed herself in charge of seating. She said she had experience with this kind of thing, and I let her run with it because honestly I had enough going on with the caterer and the church. She made a chart, little printed name cards, the whole thing. And when I looked at it 2 days before, I saw she'd put my mom at the folding table in the sunroom, the one we set up for the kids. My mom, a 63-year-old woman, seated between my nephew who's 7 and a booster seat. I asked her about it. I said, why's my mom at the kids' table? Diane didn't even look up. She said, oh, we ran out of room at the main table. Someone had to sit back there, and Rosa's so good with the little ones. I said, her name is Rosalind, and there's an open seat next to your sister. She goes, I'm saving that for Carol. They haven't seen each other in ages. Carol is her cousin, who my mother has never met. I didn't argue. I said okay. I actually said okay, and Diane smiled like she'd won something and went back to folding napkins into little swans. So the morning of, I got up early. Before anyone was awake, I went into the sunroom and I took the name cards off the kids' table and I brought them to the main table. And I took the main table cards, including Diane's, and I walked them into the sunroom. I set her right at the head of the folding table, in the little plastic chair, next to the booster seat. Then I put my mom in the seat that was being saved for Carol. Guests started arriving. Everyone found their cards, sat down, no issue. My mom was next to me, glass of wine, laughing with my aunt. It was nice. Diane came in late from doing her hair. She walked the main table twice looking for her name. I watched her do it. Then she came over and leaned down and whispered, I think there's been a mix-up, my card isn't here. I said, oh, it's in the sunroom, we ran out of room at the main table. Someone had to sit back there. She stared at me. She said, the sunroom is for the children. I said, you're so good with the little ones though. She stood up straight and her whole face changed. She said, excuse me? I kept my voice light. I said, that's where you put my mom, Diane. That's the seating you made. I just fixed one name on it. She said, this is completely different. I'm a guest. I said, so is she. By now a couple people at the table were listening. My husband caught my eye from across the room, and I could tell he'd clocked what was happening. He didn't say anything. He just went back to his plate, which is its own answer. Diane said, I am not sitting at the children's table at my own granddaughter's baptism. And I said, then you understand exactly why I moved her. She waited. I think she wanted me to laugh and say I was kidding. Go swap the cards back, make it a funny little story. I didn't. I just looked at her and picked up my fork. She went and stood in the kitchen for a while. Somebody eventually pulled a chair up to the corner of the main table for her, wedged in sideways with no place setting, which she had to ask for. My mom offered to switch with her. Diane said no in this tight little voice, like accepting would have killed her. When the lunch was winding down, she found me by the sink. She said, you embarrassed me in front of the entire family. I said, I seated you exactly where you seated her. If it's embarrassing, that's worth knowing. She said, that woman never once complained about where she sat. I said, I know, that's the difference between us. Diane hasn't called my mom Rosa since. She hasn't called her anything at all.